Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today, we find ourselves in an arena where we'll be battling others in a gladiator-like skirmish game called Eye for an Eye by Darwin Games. It plays 2 to 6 players and can be played individually or in teams and plays in 15 to 30 minutes. You'll be controlling a character trying to settle a dispute with other tribes. Now, unlike other skirmish games, Eye for an Eye is played in real time with a soundtrack timing the action. So there's no turns and players can call out and resolve actions whenever they want to trigger them. Now, Eye for an Eye is on Kickstarter right now. So I'm going to give you an overview of the game, kind of show you how it's played, and then I'll see you on the other side. Now, since this is a Kickstarter preview, all art and components you see here are subject to change and not final. You're going to want to see the Kickstarter project, where the link is in the description of this video, to see all the final art and components. Eye for an Eye can be played in 2 main modes. Here we're set up as the individual mode, known as Every Eye for Themselves. Now this plays 2 to 4 players, but I have this set up for a 3-player individual game. Now it can also be played as a team game called Alliances. This plays 2 to 6 players, and you can play with either 2 teams of 2, 3 teams of 2, or 2 teams of 3 players. The game is played over multiple rounds. Usually you'll play 1 more round than the number of players. So here we have 3 players, we'll be playing 4 rounds. Over the course of the game, you're going to be moving around, defending and attacking other players, and taking their health points and putting them in your victory point cup, where you'll get points each round. Now everyone is assigned a randomized starting point based upon the different colors on the edge of the board, and you can place yourself in one of those colors and you're going to be facing a certain direction. There's also some terrain. Notice the red lines around here. These are things that you can't move through, and as I'll show later, they sort of block line of sight. So this is how the game would begin. Each player at the beginning of the game will get their own player board, which will have their character here of a certain tribe, and they will take the character that matches that when they place to start the game. Each player will also start with a certain amount of health, and these red cubes, by rules, are supposed to be on your board, but I just put them here so you can see the board a little bit better. And this is going to be your health for each of the rounds. Now this is in real time, and there is an audio track that you can use. You can select from different ones that you'll play throughout the game, and those are going to be between 4.5 to 5 minutes long, so each round is around 5 minutes long. And if you don't want to use the music because it's too intense, you can just use a 5-minute timer for each of the rounds. Now, as that round is going on, you're going to be, in real time, rolling these dice and allocating to them to different spots on your board. Now, when you roll dice, you can either select one of these dice and match a specific spot on your board with those dice, or you can re-roll any or all dice. So if this was my opening roll and I really wanted to get a bunch of movement, maybe some attacking, I could just re-roll it all. So maybe I re-roll and I get this. As you can see, these icons, many of them have to do with these. Not all the icons here are going to show up on this board. We'll show you those later in the advanced mode of the game. But you can allocate these dice as you want on the board. For example, I have this here. It's a foot. It matches here, and this is movement. I can place it here. Now notice some of these have sort of this little green ring around it, the little flowers there. And this means you need to have at least that many to be able to activate a die here. So I have this. So if I wanted to, I could activate this die. When you activate a die, you simply just take it off and put it back into your dice pool, where you would need to re-roll it again in order to get things going again. However, if I place it here, I could place a second one here too, like this, and I could activate these now, or I could wait until I have more if I want to do a big series of movements. So let's look at this movement action. This says movement. Move 1 space in any direction, or change your facing by 1 per dice spent. And as you're resolving dice and you're taking them off and you're doing the things on the board, you're just telling people what you're doing. You would say movement 2 in this case, to let people know, so everyone kind of knows what everyone's doing and when they're resolving actions on their dice. Now you'll notice my figure here actually has 3 different arrows that it's pointing to. And by looking at this, this is showing us our basic line of sight is going out this way, this way, this way. And this is known as, these 3 are known as our front arc. Anything in the other 3 behind us is known as our rear arc, which is going to be very important when we get to attacking later. But let's say I was going here, I started like this. Now I can move or change my facing for each die. So let's say I allocate or resolve both of those dice from my board. I could move, and when you move to an adjacent spot, but you have to stay facing the same way. So let's say I move like this, and let's say I do for a second move, I also move like this. Now if I wanted to, I could have gone something like this, move like this, and I could have changed. Now when you change direction, you just move it one way, either clockwise or counterclockwise, making sure that you're just looking at the next hex. You're never looking in between the spots there. So I've taken those off, and now let's say I have this, and now I can use a sword slice. We can start getting ready to attack, and we'll put one here. This will allow us to inflict 1 hit per die spent, but we have to be adjacent to someone by default. And then maybe we try to start working on our defense down here. Now notice the defense, you need to have at least 2 of them to be able to activate these. So I don't like this, so I'd essentially try to re-roll these because I want to get some moving, maybe some more defensing. So let's say I rolled, and I now have this. Let's say we allocate the second attack. We want to allocate this. And let's say we have this, so now we have a minimum of defense here. Now normally you would never put your board on the main board like this, but I'm doing that just so you can see the dice and how they're going to resolve in this action here. So what I can do is I would take this off, I would say move 1, and in this case I just want to move. Again, we're not going to turn, we're just going to move. Now this is sort of blocking this here because you can never move onto or through other characters by default. Now that this player's in my front arc, I'm going to activate both of these, and I'm going to call the name of this attack. It's called Sword Slice and inflict 1 hit per die spent. So I'm going to resolve both of them and say Sword Slice 2. And so this player, if they cannot defend it or don't want to, they would then take 2 of their health from in front of their board, and they would place it in the cup of the person that hit them. These are essentially going to be victory points for this player at the end of the round. Now let's say this player has 3 dice of their attack there, and they call this out too. They say Trident's Jab, inflict 1 hit per die spent. So let's say they say Trident's Jab 3. They're going to try to do 3 attack on me. Now at this point, I can try to defend in real time. Now you notice this defense one says parry. Anything that has stars on both sides can be used to stop someone else from doing something. It's sort of a reaction. And this says cancel 1 hit per die spent. So this player said Trident's Jab 3, this player says Parry 2. So this player would have to spend both of these, which defends 2 of these, but then this one would hit. And so this player would get a cube from the player that they just hit, and this would be worth a point to this player over here that hit him at the end of the round. Now, even though when defending here, you have to have both of these here to be able to defend, I don't have to use them all. I could just say parry 1. Now, in order to use parry again, I would need to have at least 2 dice here to be able to resolve that. Now, you can only defend in your front arc. So if my player, or our player was like this, and this player attacked, we could not defend by default. Now, another basic action is heal. And you'll notice all 3 of these have sort of this green background, which means all 3 of them have to be there in order to be able to resolve that. And to do this, you would heal 1 health token. So if you have all 3 health on there, you can say heal 3, and you would take this off. You would just add 1 more to your pool. So there's a pool of these over by the side of the board, and you would add 1 of these to your own health, giving yourself 1 more health. And this would continue in real time, players, allocating their dice and resolving them until the soundtrack ends. Basically, the announcer would call out Yara Bong, which is essentially the end of the round, and then you would stop and you would get ready to score. Now each player would then count up the amount of cubes they have there. Those are going to be points. You'll keep track of those throughout the rounds. Also, if you inflict the last damage of another player, you get to put their character on your board as a trophy. At the beginning of every round, everyone's going to get their character back. You're going to get your full health back, and you're going to continue playing again. And you'll do this for a number of rounds of the number of players plus 1. In this case, we would play 4 rounds because there's 3 players. Whoever has the most points at the end wins. If it's tied, the tied players will play 1 more round to see who wins. Now, if you play a team version, you and the other player or players on your team will use the same starting color, so you can have up to 3 people on a team, and you all use a shared cup. So all the points will be shared between that team. All the other rules are the same. Now, once you know the basics, you can play the advanced game. One of the things that does is it gives you a new option. Every tribe board has a specific innate action. And in this one says, hey, I can use the die with the eye on it to use it as if it were a heart. So this player can use eyes up here to help heal. So this player heals a little bit easier than all the others. Now this one, if you spend the die here and then you activate it, you could say activating Savage Strike, and you can move an opponent 1 space away from you as long as they're adjacent to you. The other part of the advanced game are these new cards called tribal cards. Each player gets 3 of them. It has a band 1, band 2, band 3. They're a little bit easier to activate and they get harder as they go on. And they use these butterfly dice, and you'll use these to activate these. So you could allocate these, and then you could activate this by saying readying slow heat. And you would put this down and you would activate this. You could do the same for this, readying vented heat blast. And if you had 3 dice here, you could say readying sword dance. Now this will give you some new options. Now, for instance, if I'm able to allocate and then resolve a different amount of eye dies here, I can activate these. For example, this one says add 1 heat token to your player board. And so I could add this heat token here like this. And now this combines with this player's innate ability, where I can spend this heat token to remove 1 die from an adjacent figure's board. Now once you use this, it actually flips back over and you still have to activate it to ready it again. With the Vented Heat Blast, when you do a base attack, you can spend up to 2 of these heat tokens, and then each of those counts as 2 extra hits on your target. Now, if you're able to activate the Sword Dance, you need 4 of your 5 dice are going to have to be eyes, and if so, you can choose 2 adjacent spaces to you, and they could be the same, and you do 3 unblockable hits, which means they cannot be blocked by any means. Now, you can do 5 unblockable hits if it affects only 1 figure, and then you get to add a heat token to your player board, so obviously this is very powerful, but it's hard to activate and get ready. Let's look at some of the other cards from some of the other factions. This player, one of the ones here, their band 1 is Camouflage, and while they're adjacent to one of these terrain spaces, they automatically cancel a hit that is inflicted by a base attack to their front arc. Now this card stays in effect until you use your base attack. Now if you activate Ambush, you can flip your band 1 card from ready to unready and resolve your base attack, and you can spend any number of the dice here to add an equal number of unblockable hits to that base attack. And if you resolve Brutal Charge, you can move up to 4 spaces and then do 4 unblockable hits to an opponent's adjacent figure. But if you started this next to a terrain space, then you can move 1 extra space and do 1 unblockable hit. Now with this specific tribe, if you're able to activate Slippery after being attacked either through your front or rear arc by an adjacent figure, you can immediately move to a space adjacent to that figure, and then you can change the facing of your own character. Now when you use Lunge, instead of just being able to attack just adjacent like normal, they can attack up to 2 away, but the space that they're going through has to be empty. So they could attack this player here. Meaning if this player was here, they couldn't use the Lunge because this space is not empty and it blocks line of sight, so they're not able to go through there. With the hunting net, you can target any character that's within 2 range of your hunting net. You give this player this card, they must wipe all of their allocated dice off their board, and then they cannot place any more dice on their board until they allocate 4 attacks to this card. When they do that, this card goes back to the player that owns this card, and then that player can then start allocating dice again on their own board. Now, I'm not going to show you all of the tribes in the game, but here's just a couple more to look at. Again, check the Kickstarter page for all the final artwork and components. Well, I hope this helped you get a good understanding of Eye for an Eye. As you can see, it's a unique skirmish game where you'll be playing in real time. Now, just because it's in real time does not mean that the fastest player wins. Timing is everything because it's the timing of when you resolve those actions and abilities and second guessing what the other players are doing that's vitally important. Now add to that the tenseness of the soundtrack, and trying to balance fast but thoughtful moves makes this game unique. Now it's on Kickstarter right now, and I've placed the link below me in the description of this video, which will take you directly to the project page where you can see all of the final art, components, and possibly even pledge for the game, where I'm sure the people at Darwin Games would love your support.